Hi everyone, welcome. This is the ShotSpotter Water 3 meeting. It's the third discussion that the TBR is hosting on ShotSpotter. Really excited to have you all here. Um, I just want to lay some ground rules before we get started. First of all, this event is being recorded, so be mindful that it is being recorded and will be shared. So be careful. With that, um, you may put your questions in the chat or you can raise your hands to ask questions. And if you do choose to raise your hands, just another reminder that it is being recorded. So if you decide to speak or have your camera on, it will be on the recording and will be available for folks to see. Right. And please remember to keep your cameras off and keep yourselves on mute unless you are speaking. And those are the main ground rules. So we'll get started from there. I'm gonna pass it to Andy to play the video to introduce us to the community education workshops.
Welcome to the Black Responses bi-weekly community workshops and skills shares. These workshops will center marginalized community members to build our knowledge of abolitionist principles, practices, and non-carceral safety response strategies. We're building community capacity for collective care, mutual aid, and creating safe spaces that can grow public support for defunding the police and funding community safety alternatives. But you might be wondering, what is TBR?
The Black Response is an abolitionist research and advocacy organization that envisions and works towards building a world free of carceral and harmful responses. We seek to uplift the Black, brown, and otherwise marginalized communities in Cambridge and everywhere by working to unbundle and abolish policing, defund the police to invest in communities, and support the building of alternatives to public safety and the development of community care initiatives. We operate as a type of nonprofit membership cooperative whereby TBR members, the core governance committee, make decisions about and for the programs and operations of the organization.
You might be wondering what abolition is. Abolition is the practice of dismantling and removing a system. When we say abolition, we seek to abolish the prison industrial complex. Prison industrial complex abolition is a political vision with the goal of eliminating imprisonment, policing, and surveillance, and creating lasting alternatives to punishment and imprisonment. The Black Response is an abolitionist organization. We operate with transformative justice principles.
Meanwhile, traditional justice models, like carceral systems, hand the problem over to the state and state experts, thinking of lawyers, judges, police, principals, whereas carceral systems ask what law or rule has been broken, who broke it, and what is the punishment. A system of transformative justice might ask what harm has been done, who has been harmed, who is responsible for the repair, what needs to happen to repair the harm and prevent future cycles of harm from continuing.
Are you interested in learning more about transformative justice, prison industrial complex abolition, or just want to keep in touch? Go to our website, theblackresponcecambridge.com, and sign up for our quarterly newsletters.
Right. Thank you, Andy. I will pass it to our host for this evening, Devin, or Counselor Sabrina Wheeler.
Thanks so much for being here. I'm Jeevan Sabrina Wheeler. I'm a city councilor in Cambridge. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm one of the many folks working to try to get Cambridge to stop using ShotSpotter, which is a surveillance technology that many other cities have either stopped using or never started using to begin with. This is the third session we've done on ShotSpotter, the Black Response has done. That I've been able to facilitate. The first session was an introduction to ShotSpotter technology. The second session focused on legal questions to ShotSpotter. So now I'm going to pass it over to Gabe Rojas, who's going to say a little bit more about what ShotSpotter is.
Great, thank you, Counselor. Hi there, everyone. It's great to see you all this evening. My name is Gabe Rojas. I use he, him pronouns, and I am a sociology PhD student at the University of Chicago. So for about nearly the past year, I have been completing research on ShotSpotter and how its parent company has engaged various local actors in Chicago specifically. So I'll briefly give a walkthrough of what is ShotSpotter, the technology, what the company claims it does. I'll provide some background on the company itself, and then some additional things to consider when we're talking about ShotSpotter. So to kick it off, ShotSpotter is what's called an acoustic gunshot detection technology that is sold by a company named SoundThinking to cities, agencies, and police departments across the country. There are other companies that sell similar technology, but SoundThinking and ShotSpotter has the largest footprint. This company claims that their ShotSpotter technology can detect the sound of a gunshot and triangulate that sound within about 82 feet, give or so, of a radius. And they also will say that they are able to help police and first responders arrive to a scene when no one else calls 911. However, that's a super, super dubious claim, and I can go into greater detail about that if people like. You can think of the technology as having three components. There's the hardware, there's the software, and then there are people involved. So on the hardware side of things, ShotSpotter is composed of a series of 15 to 20 sensors per square mile. And these sensors are placed on top of light poles and buildings, and they contain microphones, GPS units, memories and processing tech, and also the ability for cell phone service to transmit the data that it's recording. And that being said, the microphones are always on, they're recording, and they save audio data for like about 30 hours. Now, ShotSpotter's proprietary software, like the algorithm that it uses, has never been independently studied. And that is what is used to process the audio data that it records from the microphones. So when at least 3 microphones capture a gunshot-esque sound and the software classifies it as a potential gunshot, ShotSpotter employee will review the audio and then determine whether or not to alert local police for dispatching to the scene. Now, SoundThinking has claimed that their technology is 97% accurate in detecting gunfire, but that statistic is super incredibly misleading because they've paid a consultancy group to quote unquote audit their product. The consultants didn't actually audit their software or their technology as a whole for that 97% accuracy figure. What they actually did was count the number of times a client, like a police department, complained about an alert. Otherwise, the company assumes that every single alert that it captures is actual gunfire. Now, independent journalists, governmental oversight agencies, government accountability organizations have all contested that claim in variously different ways. So, for example, Chicago's Office of the Inspector General and New York City's Comptroller have both noted that the technology itself has an egregiously high false positive rate that sends police officers to wasteful goose chases and precarious situations for community members who are there. Now, a little bit of background for the company itself. It was founded in 1996. It was actually founded by a physicist named Robert Schoen, and along with a couple of engineers in California who were inspired by earthquake detection technology, and they wanted to transfer that over into gunshots. Now, since then, it has constantly changed its marketing to win and maintain contracts with cities, with agencies, with townships, and so on. The company first claimed that its technology could decrease gun violence, and that's how they were trying to sell their product to cities. Research debunked that pretty quickly. SoundThinking then claimed that ShotSpotter could improve gun crime clearance rates through improving evidence collection for gun crime potential scenes. That again was debunked by independent researchers. And now it's manipulatively claiming that its technology can save lives of gunshot victims. And there's no rigorous evidence of that. So aside from just selling a bogus technology that wastes public funds, I'd like to share a few serious ethical issues surrounding the technology. First, and I stated this earlier, ShotSpotter has an intensely high false positive rate. So in Chicago, our Office of the Inspector General found that only 9% of ShotSpotter alerts led to documented evidence of gun crime or investigatory stops or firearm recovery. Additionally, they also found that the introduction of ShotSpotter technology in Chicago changed the way that Chicago police officers perceived and interacted with individuals present in the areas where the ShotSpotter alerts were frequently went off. So it's also changing the behavior of police officers in a more aggressive way. This pretty much leads me to my second point, which is that ShotSpotter is a form of what some academics will call a digital stop and frisk policy, where police officers are dispatched expecting gunfire, they're on high alert, and that puts communities in harm's way of aggressive police interventions and unjustified stops when they arrive. Thirdly, as we continue to witness Trump's abuse of overreaching executive power and targeting of marginalized communities across the nation, surveillance technologies like ShotSpotter can serve as another discriminatory tool that federal agencies like ICE use to survey, target, and accost people. We do know that the DHS has already used other forms of surveillance technologies for that form of targeting. I'm happy to talk about that as well later. And then lastly, the company itself attempts to reshape the very meaning of what public safety is, for who, and how it's defined. So ultimately, this is a company that profits from the policing technology industry that targets Black and Latino communities through their dollars, their lobbying, and their marketing. SoundThinking has really attempted to shape public opinion on what public safety is that best suits their profit margin and not necessarily at all the safety of the communities who have these sensors and microphones on their blocks. So with that all being said, I'll be happy to answer some questions later on in today's scheduling, but I'll pass it back over to Andy.
All right, no, it goes back to Jeevan.
Oh no,
yeah,
I'm so
just doing the
sorry.
transition. Thanks for that background on ShotSpotter, Gabe, which was really helpful. And we're now going to go to Andy, who's going to give a little more context on ShotSpotter in Cambridge specifically.
Hi, everybody. My name is Andy Suarez. I am a core member team from the Black Response, and the one leading the project or research of ShotSpotter, Stop ShotSpotter here in Cambridge. I'm going to quickly share my screen. I prepare a little graphics here to explain a little bit more about how Cambridge was introduced to ShotSpotter. But basically, Gabriel already covered some ground when it comes to what is ShotSpotter. Just like it was in Chicago, it's in Cambridge. Obviously, there are different cities, so the effect on the population, on the communities, are pretty much similar. But he already talked a little bit about who makes ShotSpotter, which is the company SoundThinking, and something that it's similar for them, but is for us, which is still running right now, is who is paying for ShotSpotter in Cambridge. So right now we have an active grant with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security that pretty much is being founded ShotSpotter in Cambridge for since their inception. We don't have much information about year by year or for how long, or if Cambridge has ever paid for it directly, but it has been funded by the DHS in the last couple of years. We can track ShotSpotter in Cambridge all the way back to 2014. Basically, the devices were installed between 2013 and 2014. We know this because of the dates on the first multi-city contract that Boston made in 2013, which included not only Cambridge, but Chelsea, Everett, Revere, and Somerville as well. We have some, curious post that was made by a concerned a competition in that moment on Twitter where they recorded their police department around 2014. They recorded the police department with a very specialized police car shooting on the car on the back of the car, just overnight, just testing the reverberation and calibrating the devices. But after that, there's the information about, like, the public information about ShotSpotter is very scarce. We can track some information from the data of this device from 2018, which I'm gonna show a little bit up front. But first, I want to show this picture where we can see here a little bit of the device right here. The picture on the left is actually the top of the Cambridge Bridge on Latin High School. You can see there that actually I took that picture, but it's maybe it looks close, but it's actually very, very far away. The only way to see it, because usually the devices are installed in the middle of the building, public buildings, and but that it's like a very close range picture. Here I talk a little bit more about what I said already, but something that I wanna something that I want to show too is the device locations. As you can see here on the left is basically a picture that we put together that you probably in the future will be able to see more interactively. We are working in interactive link where people are going to be able to see the data that I'm about to present and show. These microphones, as you can see here, are primarily in the buildings, light posts, like I said, in the middle of the public buildings like high schools, hospitals, obviously fire and police departments, and buildings of Section 8 that are from the government. And they, in Cambridge, they are more predominant in the black and brown neighborhoods, more more specific, the Port, Cambridge Port, and in the coast, the Riverside neighborhood. As you can see here, the blue points, the little blue points are the devices. The other green and red are shot incidents. Again, this information I'm going to show a little bit now, but we're going to have in our website, in the Black Response website, we're going to have an interactive map where you're going to be able to see this and see a little bit more about the details of this. And on the right is a picture that we show on our first ShotSpotter one-on-one, where we have the historical redlining map superposed with the ShotSpotter locations, not only in Cambridge and Somerville, but we have Everett here and Revere as well, which they, like I said, they do have the ShotSpotter contract as well. But you can see here the red and yellow locations from the redlining map are still being targeted. Good. So here I have a couple of more pictures of the devices. These are all of these pictures are original. I took it myself. It was a long time ago when we first started this, like a year and a half ago. But all of these pictures come from Cambridge, Somerville, and some of them are from Worcester, which they have their own. They have their own separate contract with SoundThinking. But most of these are from Cambridge. Some of these are from Somerville. But that was like early research situation happening there. Then I want to show real quick about the data in Cambridge. That we so far as of right now we can trace data from Cambridge, like I said, from 2006. We have done it by public records. These records are called bridge stats. These records are available in the Cambridge website, and they are not ShotSpotter activations per se. They are shots fired, confirmed shots fired by the police, shot related cases fire in Cambridge. Sorry, I kind of. So basically, what we do is that we come into this reports, and most of these reports they provide information whether there was a ShotSpotter activation or not. So they are not dedicated to ShotSpotter, but we scrape that information all the way from 2018, month by month, all the way to 2024. They're still like getting more and more information coming. I believe the last one was from February that was uploaded. And we have we can show you here. This is the preliminary data that we have from 2018 to 2024. And I'm gonna quickly explain, each of the rows that we have here. We have the year, the date that this happened, is the time. Again, these are confirmed cases from the report by the police, but of shot fire, not ShotSpotter alerts. So we have the location of the shots here, and we have the information on whether or not there was a ShotSpotter alert for this incident specifically. These are not whether or not there was a ShotSpotter activation, but if there was an alert attached to that incident. Here we have the shell cases that were found on the location. The ones that don't show or say 0, it was because there were no shell case found. Injuries, arrest, and some additional details talking about like what happened specifically in each of this location. Basically, this data is the one that you can see in the picture where it shows like the shots fired and incidents. But this is the data that we have as of right now, and that we are going to display digitally in our website again, where you, as soon as that we finish with the methodology that we are using here, this data is going to be available for everybody. Good. So, oh, I'm sorry. I just know. Oh, yeah. I'm so sorry, Joe. Joe is taking notes, and I'm talking way too fast. I just noticed that. Okay, so okay. So that is the information that I have so far. In Cambridge, I want to add something else, which is a collaboration that we have been doing and we've been creating from the beginning of this year. We created a coalition with Somerville, and we call it the Camberville Coalition, Stop ShotSpotter Coalition, which it's meant to be an extension of the renowned National Coalition counterpart, various organizations both from both cities, and we actually have some organization from Boston as well. But as of right now, it's Cambridge and Somerville. We're coming together in a hub in order to develop a campaign, the contract for this invasive technology. So we have 3 objectives in this coalition, and they are basically pass a policy order to the city councilor to end the city contract with SoundThinking, which is one of the contracts that SoundThinking has with the city. We have another one, but that's another conversation. To end the ShotSpotter contract and remove the devices. Then we have the city manager carry out the city council's policy and end the contract to remove the devices. And at the end, capture evidence that devices have been removed, which is something that cities like Chicago now they cancel the contract, but they are having that removing the devices seems to be another fight. But those are the 3 goals of the coalition, and we are trying to do this as much as in Cambridge as well in Somerville, and hopefully in the other cities from the multi-city contract that we have from Boston. Yeah, so that is pretty much it. I'm so sorry if I was a little bit too fast in the information, but if you guys have any questions, please drop it on the chat, and I can answer it in the Q&A at the end. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Andy. We're now going to go talk more about the campaign to get rid of ShotSpotter, including what the process looks like to end the contract that the city of Cambridge has with it. And for that, I'm going to pass it over to Stephanie.
I want to go back to the data really quickly. So before we go into what the process would look like to end the contract, it's important to understand what information we have and what information we don't have. Right, thank you, Andy. So as Andy said, this document is information that we were able to get from the Bridge Stats report. And we separated each of these things into these different columns, where the first column is the year of the incident, the column B is the date of the incident, C is the time of the incident, D is the location of the incident, E is whether there was a corresponding ShotSpotter alert. I'll come back to that. And then Andy went through shell casings, injuries, and arrests. But going back to this true false of whether there's a corresponding ShotSpotter alert, what we can understand from this information is that we know that each incident that's located that's on this document is a confirmed shots fired incident investigated by the Cambridge Police Department. And what column E describes is if ShotSpotter was alerted to that gunfire incident or not. And if you look at column E and column D together, you might start to notice that there are incidents where we know the locations of the ShotSpotter devices and those neighborhoods where there was a confirmed shots fired incident and there was not a corresponding shots fired alert. And so that goes to some of the credibility of the false positive rates that Gabriel mentioned at the start of the conversation. We're going to create some visualizations. As Andy said, it's going to be posted on our website once we finish writing out the methodology to sort of describe what the visuals will be showing. But this is really important information because in order for us to convince community members that this technology doesn't necessarily do what we think it does, we have to show you that it doesn't do what it says it does, even where it's supposed to do it. And so that's what this data is showing us. Okay, so I wanted to introduce that first. Okay, what the process is for getting rid of the ShotSpotter contract and ultimately the devices in Cambridge, that process is a little bit complex. Andy introduced the coalition that we're forming, and if you are interested in joining the coalition, please do let us know. But basically what we have to do is speak to all of the city councilors, determine if we can get 5 of the 9 city councilors to vote in favor of a policy order that asks the city manager to end the contract with ShotSpotter, remove the devices, and then provide a public safety hearing to give an update on the progress of all of it. And so that's what we need to do. And the process for doing that first begins with speaking to all of the city councilors, which we have begun to do. And then it goes into what we're hoping to do is the public safety committee hearing, where we're hoping to hear from the Cambridge Police Department, because as I said, we only had the Bridge Stats data. We would like to get all of the ShotSpotter alert data so we can get a true estimate of how frequently it is creating alerts and how accurate these alerts are based on the confirmed shots fired incidents that we do have. So that's further research that we'd like to do. We've submitted a FOIA request to the city before, and we've been denied. And we've been denied on the basis that SoundThinking claims that giving this information, like the location of the devices and the number of alerts, might actually harm the credibility and effectiveness of the product itself. And so we've been denied. So we don't have this information. So we can't run any real analysis on all of the data that exists in the city. And this is not publicly available, and it's not available for public information request. So a public safety committee hearing would be the time that we would be able to hear from the police department about how they actually use the ShotSpotter system, how efficient it is for their purposes. And we would also like to know what their protocols are. And specifically, we're interested in hearing the protocols based on how it differs between receiving an alert for a gunshot incident from ShotSpotter versus like an on-site viewing versus a 911 call. So this is really important information because how then the police approach what happens next will give us a better sense of whether or not ShotSpotter is doing anything at all. And so we need that information from the police department. We also would like to make the ShotSpotter alert data public so that not only we can analyze it for ourselves, but we would encourage others and academics to analyze the data, and we can have better sense of the effectiveness of the data if it's made public, and we aim to ask for that at a public safety committee hearing. But the most important thing is from a public safety committee hearing, not only will the public get to speak and ask their questions, and the city council gets to speak and ask their questions, but from there we can sort of get a sense of if and who which of the city councilors might stand with us on the position to remove the ShotSpotter contract. And so that's the clear next step from our perspective. And so after the Public Safety Committee hearing, the goal then would be to put together a policy order in collaboration with two city councilors. The law is that we need to have two city councilors submit a policy order. So we need to work with them to sort of craft the language, and then we need to talk to all of the city councilors to make sure that we have the 5 votes going into a city council meeting to vote on the process. If we are successful and we have 5 votes in favor of our policy order, the next step would be to follow through with the city manager to ensure that he does cancel the contract. And so then we would go into negotiations with the city manager about what canceling the contract would mean and what the process and timeline would look like. And then what we hope to do is capture evidence that the devices are actually being removed. But we run into some problems with that. We know the locations, as Andy said, we know the locations of the public devices, so the ones that are on public property, but we don't know the locations of the devices that are on private property. And so that would be a question that we need to ask the city manager and DPW that would ultimately be removing the devices probably, to figure out if and how all of the devices, including the ones that are on private property, are removed. And once we have some confirmation about all of that, then our campaign will be officially over. And that's the process. Pass it back to you, JB.
Thanks, Stephanie. We're now going to get more into ShotSpotter research and including how that could drive the upcoming committee meeting we're hoping to hold and the policy order. And for that, I will pass it to Kelsey.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kelsey. I use they, them pronouns. So a lot of what I'm going to go over in the research that I've done to help with this campaign will kind of be a refresher on what's already been said, especially a lot of things that Gabriel already mentioned. But to start with an overall summary, I was asked to ponder on the question of which direction Cambridge can take the surveillance ordinance policy. And so to begin with, the surveillance ordinance policy is a very good tool. It's a good oversight transparency tool. The problem is that it's just not actually being used to regulate or oversee ShotSpotter specifically. So ultimately, my recommendation is to take this surveillance policy ordinance to its limit in order to demand municipal level oversight of ShotSpotter, because there is an absence of oversight at basically every other level around the country. There's no oversight being done by police. There's no oversight being done by ShotSpotter or SoundThinking itself. There's no federal oversight, and there's no court oversight of how ShotSpotter is being used. So in my research, I tried to compile nearly any and all recent research on ShotSpotter into one area so that it can be compared and analyzed, and we can look for any model methods that can be used for canceling the contract. So of all of the studies that I was able to compile, overall, current research has been slow going on ShotSpotter. A lot of the research that does exist is It's from before 2020, so it's like before when a lot of this technology advanced. And as we know, technology is advancing rapidly, and this research, as well as the oversight, is not keeping up with that. But the research is happening on all levels. The research has mostly focused on the efficacy, the impact on police behavior, privacy issues, and the impact on marginalized communities. Of the research that does exist, it repeatedly supports the assertion that ShotSpotter does not do what it's advertised to do, and that its reported benefits are nearly entirely all a marketing ploy. The majority of ShotSpotter alerts across the US, as mentioned, are false positives, where they label a sound as gunfire, but there's no evidence, or it was mistaken. Sometimes they can pick up fireworks or car backfiring or construction noise as a gunshot. The research also consistently shows that ShotSpotter has no effect on gunshot victims' medical outcomes. You will constantly see SoundThinking and police use ShotSpotter as a miracle tool to save people's lives. There is no actual scientific evidence to back that claim up. Research has also not found any direct link between ShotSpotter and gun crime reduction. Another excuse for ShotSpotter is that it reduces gun crime. Of the data available, it shows that there is no significant effect of ShotSpotter on gun offenses. Overall, probably the most glaring issue that there is absolutely no scientific validation of ShotSpotter, its algorithm, how it works. There's also no scientific validation of the training that is given to ShotSpotter employees to be able to recognize gunshots in an image of sound waves. So ShotSpotter only ever references anecdotal evidence to support their claims. And as mentioned, they rely on self-reporting from the police departments to determine their accuracy rates. And whenever there has been attempts to do rigorous scientific research on the algorithm and on the program overall, ShotSpotter or SoundThinking, the parent company, has consistently blocked these efforts because they claim that the algorithm is proprietary, and so they can't reveal any of it because they're trade secrets. So therefore, no one can scientifically validate their program. So all of this puts the responsibility for validation and testing if they're actually saying the right things. All of that responsibility is put either on the defendants who get caught up in a ShotSpotter alert and get arrested and go to court. And it also puts that responsibility on the courts to try to investigate ShotSpotter and scientifically validate it. Obviously, the courts don't have time for that. Defendants don't have resources to do all of that. So oftentimes the courts will defer to the expertise of SoundThinking and of the police department, and they will still admit ShotSpotter evidence, even if it's questionable. So when thinking of which direction to take the surveillance ordinance policy in Cambridge, I tried to take out a few different categories. The first category that I went over, and that is probably the most relevant to this campaign, is that there is quite a good amount of evidence to support the assertion that ShotSpotter violates the Massachusetts wiretap law. People may or may not know, but Massachusetts has possibly the most strongest wiretap law. With this law, it says that police can only engage in wiretapping if they're a party to the communication or they have prior authorization through something like a warrant. That's not what happens with ShotSpotter alerts. So there is actually Massachusetts-specific precedent in ruling ShotSpotter a violation of the wiretap law. This came with the decision made in Commonwealth v. Dennison, which was in 2016. It was south of Boston, I believe. The prosecution tried to enter evidence from ShotSpotter where they had recorded voices of the people around where the gunfire took place, and people said the name of the defendant in question, and they were trying to use that to prove that he was guilty. However, the judge in this case ruled that there is a reasonable expectation of privacy with conversations in public. And therefore, because ShotSpotter is listening 24/7 and recording 24/7, it violates that privacy. And there's a quote from the judge that I think sums it up nicely. The continuous secret audio surveillance of selective urban neighborhoods is the type of surreptitious eavesdropping as an investigative tool that the legislature sought to prohibit with the wiretap law. So, when it comes to those privacy violation concerns, SoundThinking themselves, as well as police themselves, and SoundThinking also got the support of the NYU Law Policing Project to make the claim that, sure, there's a risk of a privacy invasion, but it's very low, it's very minimal, and police aren't eavesdropping on you. But the concern, basically, if we take away the part that ShotSpotter is being used or is not being used to share conversations, the concern is that ShotSpotter can pick up these conversations and voices, and that info can be listened to, and it has been used before. So that's that for the wiretap law. That's a pretty big piece of it. The next concerns with ShotSpotter, and that can impact the decision here, are concerns about the Fourth Amendment and violations of the Fourth Amendment. And as Gabriel mentioned, this rise of a new form of stop and frisk using ShotSpotter alerts. So Fourth Amendment, no unlawful search and seizure. So there's emerging research that shows that ShotSpotter may be having an effect on police behavior in regards to search and seizure. There has been evidence in Chicago and New York and elsewhere that police have used an immediate ShotSpotter alert, or they've used the knowledge that the alert is happening in an area that has had a lot of other alerts, or maybe they're on patrol and they're in an area, there's no ShotSpotter alert, but they know that this area gets a lot of ShotSpotter alerts, so they're already suspicious. There's been evidence to show that police have been using ShotSpotter as an excuse to harass people who just happen to be nearby the alerts. So like I mentioned, there's multiple examples around the United States, and the issue with this is that ShotSpotter is being used to bypass the individualized reasonable suspicion requirement for search and seizure. In turn, the police will stop, search, and arrest people who happen to be around. And when you look at the data, unfortunately, this is nearly all Black men who are stopped. And even if they're not involved in a ShotSpotter alert at all, they can still be harassed and they can still be arrested after a pat down. This in turn causes people to be caught up in charges for things like drug possession or gun possession, even though there was no reasonable suspicion to accuse them of doing that in the first place. It was just ShotSpotter that gave them the reasonable suspicion. Moving on now to another big thing that I found in my research is enough evidence to make an argument that ShotSpotter may be engaging in evidence tampering in cases. So the biggest example of this comes with the case of Sylvan Simmons in Rochester, New York. This happened in 2017. So there's a ShotSpotter alert, I believe, and then a 911 call where a witness mentioned seeing a Chevy Impala leaving the scene. So the cops got that alert. They start driving around and they pull up to a driveway where they see a Chevy Impala and Sylvan Simmons is getting out of it. However, the cops do not have their lights on, do not have their sirens on. They pull up, they don't announce who they are, who they're with, there's no ID. And Sylvan reports that, there's a bright light shining on him. And as he saw the officers approach, he only saw a gun drawn. So obviously, if you don't know who's coming at you and they have a gun drawn, you're going to want to run. That's what Sylvan did. He ran away. And as he ran away, that cop shot him 4 times. The cop then claimed that Sylvan had fired first. So the cop was acting in self-defense. However, there was no evidence actually to corroborate any of that. Actually, later, all of that was disproven. And then on top of the disproven part, a witness nearby did hear the gunshots. They only heard 4. That's going to be very important. They only heard 4 shots, and ShotSpotter's alert system only recorded 4 shots. There was no other evidence that Sylvan even had a gun on him or had used a gun, no gun residue, nothing. So the reality is that there were only 4 shots. However, when it came to the trial for Sylvan Simmons, a SoundThinking ShotSpotter engineer testified under oath that ShotSpotter employees and police can change the data on a ShotSpotter report whenever they want to. And so in this case specifically, there's evidence to prove that the police department contacted SoundThinking and they asked them verbatim to find one more gunshot. So ShotSpotter complied with that, and they were able to see that the report had been manipulated a few times, and the last version of the report had an extra gunshot on it, a 5th gunshot. They did this because they wanted to match the police officer's testimony. All of this was misproven. I bring up this case specifically because there's no oversight of ShotSpotter in this realm, and there's no publicly available data or ongoing oversight of how often this kind of evidence tampering happens. So that's a pretty big issue when it comes to ShotSpotter. And then my final point with the research is just highlighting the dangers of that ever vigilant ear of ShotSpotter. I have seen in past city council Cambridge meetings, the police department themselves and ShotSpotter employees have referred to ShotSpotter as an ever vigilant ear, which means it is always listening. So the dangers of that is that, as Andy mentioned, those sensors can be identified in the wild. They are usually a white diamond or a white square, as they saw. The sensors, as Gabriel mentioned, they physically store those recordings on the sensor for 30 hours before it gets overwritten by new data. It actually used to be 72 hours, but the one good thing that the NYU policing project did was convince them to take it down to 30 hours. However, the fact is that these recordings are being stored on the sensors, and if somebody knew where they were, they could potentially intercept it. The ShotSpotter sensor placement also just assumes that there's no reasonable expectation of privacy when you're around those sensors, whether you know they're there or they're not. And in New York City, there's evidence to show that ShotSpotter was given the ability to tap into CCTV cameras. So when a ShotSpotter alert goes off for a gunshot, they're actually able to go into the CCTV system and turn cameras in the direction of the alert. And in New York City, the police officers have also been using this ability to use their facial recognition technology on anyone who happens to be caught in that area. So, overall, given all of this research, my overall takeaway is that if it's possible, ShotSpotter should be tacked on to the facial recognition ban that's in the surveillance ordinance, because it's much like facial recognition. There's little to no oversight. It's being used in nefarious ways. It's an invasion of privacy, things like that. The surveillance ordinance whole point is oversight and protection of the community, and there is no oversight of ShotSpotter on any level around the US. So it's on the municipal level in Cambridge to do this oversight. And when looking for the annual reports that are required by the surveillance ordinance, specifically looking at the annual reports focused on ShotSpotter, there's a whole list of questions that are required to be answered in the surveillance ordinance. If you read the reports that were published, nearly all of them either outright don't answer questions, or they give very vague non-answers, very generic answers, no hard data, no numbers. And then when it comes to assessing the impact on marginalized communities in Cambridge, every single report that I read was the same copy-pasted answer year after year, and it was just, there may be an impact, and that's just par for the course. Basically, that's what it says. So there's no information, none of this is happening. There's no real study of the impact on marginalized communities in Cambridge. And all of this together serves to undermine the surveillance ordinance. It was a very important ordinance that got passed. Unfortunately, it's not living up to its potential with ShotSpotter. I also recently came across research actually yesterday from 2 years ago. There have been some people who are accusing SoundThinking of manipulating the direction of federal grants. So DHS is what funds the ShotSpotter system in Cambridge and the surrounding Boston area. Some people have accused ShotSpotter or SoundThinking of directing these grants so that they can get the funding. And at this point, I have not checked on the progress of it, but there have been rumblings of perhaps a congressional investigation into SoundThinking on this matter. So that's my overall thing, and that's all.
Wow. Kelsey, thank you for blowing my mind. Um, I want to invite Gabe, Andy, all back to the screen, and for you to stay on the screen, Kelsey. And I want to give an opportunity for folks to ask some questions. There was already a question in the chat for Kelsey. Kelsey, can you say some more about the organization that you represent?
Yes. Sorry about that. I didn't do that. I am the Senior Research Associate at the Community Resource Hub for Safety and Accountability. We are an organization that's been around since 2018 or so. We focus specifically on law enforcement. A lot of our work is on alternatives to safety that don't involve policing, abolition of the police, and how to carry forth these goals in policy and legislation. So what I do with the Resource Hub is research. Quite a lot of things fall under research. But I am also in charge of the website, and we have a great website with a lot of resources on surveillance technology and ShotSpotter. Our website is communityresourcehub.org if you want to check that out. That's me.
Thank you, Kelsey. Can you drop that link in the chat for folks? There's a question, how many devices were on that graph? I think that's for you, Andy.
So in that graph was only the, like Stephanie said, the public devices or in public buildings, and there were 25, around 25, 26. There is a different data that we are waiting to get that is basically from the same liquor that provide the information of the locations that will provide us with information of which of those devices, which apparently has been a really high amount, discover how many of those devices are actually working because of how long between maintenance they have. Sometimes it has been found in different cities, around 30 to 40% of the devices installed haven't been working for months and not being like picking up on anything, and the city been paying for it. Just a caveat there.
While we wait for folks to continue typing their questions in the chat, Gabe, would you mind saying something about the ShotSpotter campaign in Chicago and any analysis of the data from the ShotSpotter alerts from Chicago?
Yeah, happy to. So the Chicago coalition has been very successful. They were able to cancel the contract in Chicago. So through their campaign work, their organizing, they were able to convince the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, to cancel the contract back in February of 2024. And it officially ended in September of 2024. And the city actually had like a 2-month extension period from September to November to, I guess, quote unquote, retrain police officers on what to do without ShotSpotter. So I'm sorry. I think you may have been able to hear my cat hiss at my other cat, so apologies if you heard that. But yeah, they were a fantastic organization that were able to follow a different path post post the call for defunding the police in cities where that movement started to lose some steam. So I think they were very strategic and very successful in targeting another apparatus in that space. And then as for the data in Chicago, so there's some really great journalism. I'm happy to incorporate some of it in the chat here, but independent journalists effectively found that over 90% of ShotSpotter alerts have a corresponding 911 call. And that one was incredibly important because one of the things that ShotSpotter will repeatedly claim is that 80 to 90% of people do not call 911 if there is a shot fired. And when they say that, they're actually quoting a Brookings Institute research that that uses ShotSpotter data as the outcome. So they're using the X variable as the Y variable. So it's a very dubious and questionable research project, and it also wasn't like peer reviewed or anything. It was kind of a briefing. So that I would say is probably some of the most striking research that came out of ShotSpotter data in Chicago, and I'll place a link in the chat in just momentarily.
Thanks. I mean, Gabe, you started to answer this question, but Lee asked a question that I think is best for Andy. Have you, and I think that's TBR, looked at the data to see how many times someone calls the police about gunshots and their ShotSpotter alert versus how many times nobody calls the police and there is an alert?
Yeah, definitely. We actually, it was very curious because a couple of weeks ago we had a conversation with one of the city councilors, which brought his opinions about ShotSpotter to be somewhat in the middle, not supporting or not against it. But he did mention they had this experience, and I think he said it was like pretty close to his house where there was a gunshot incident, and according to his perspective, apparently the situation was solved and the police got there in time because of ShotSpotter. But we noticed after that conversation came in, and we quick investigation, that this actually happened in a very traffic intersection in Cambridge in broad daylight. And then we were like, and so this is why you believe in ShotSpotter, but this is happening in such a traffic area in broad daylight. There must be more than one 911 call, so there's no way to say that it was ShotSpotter. So from that moment, we definitely we thought about it before, but we definitely doing the process of FOIA requests on 911 calls from the time that we have the data, which is from 2018, all the way down if we are able to get our hands on it, or if they don't actually reject us like the first time, like Stephanie was saying. But yeah, that's how we're trying to compare it, whether ShotSpotter. I mean, we are forced to go there because they will not release whether the activations of the device. So that's a wager.
Yeah, thank you for answering that. There's another question to Kelsey. Kelsey, can you repeat the point about ShotSpotter manipulating federal grants? What do you mean by manipulating?
Yeah, so I have not done a deep dive on if there is more research on this, but in the research that focuses on the concerns around the violation of the Fourth Amendment with ShotSpotter, there have been folks who have mentioned that ShotSpotter, they may have a hand in persuading where some of these DHS grants go. I don't know proof of that so far. It's something I would love to look into. I think this also stemmed from the fact that recently, very recently, last month, Little Rock, Arkansas canceled their ShotSpotter contract, and they had actually started ShotSpotter with a DHS grant, and I believe that's where some of this concern came from. They have since canceled after taking on the cost by themselves. But yeah, that's just what I've begun to uncover right now.
Thank you. That's the concern that we have. I think Andy alluded to it, but basically one of the points that the city council in Cambridge make is that we're not paying for it. So like, why not have this extra thing? But we don't know how long they'll pay for it. We're a sanctuary city and we're losing some $23 million in federal funding. It doesn't look like the Trump administration is interested in removing surveillance technology, which should be concerning by itself, but it sounds like because we're not paying for it, there's not really a need for us to consider, uh, what it does and what it doesn't do. I just want to check in. Are there any further questions? Oh. Question for Kelsey. Can you say more about the Fourth Amendment? And what about the First Amendment?
I'm not sure about the First Amendment. Obviously there's this risk that your free speech can be recorded and used against you. Or if you happen to be near a ShotSpotter alert and you somehow become a person of interest, there's concerns around that. But with the Fourth Amendment, so this blocking of unreasonable search and seizure, when it comes to the ShotSpotter context, this was definitely there's a lot of evidence of this in Chicago. I'm sure Gabriel knows of, but ShotSpotter alerts, either getting a ShotSpotter alert or just knowing that there have been a lot of ShotSpotter alerts, some police have been using that as an excuse to basically view any and everyone as reasonably suspicious. However, the legal research and some of the court rulings have shown that, they don't outright say it's ShotSpotter can't be used for this, but they say it for reasonable suspicion purposes. They say it for other technology and things like that. Especially for CCTV, I believe there's a more modern court case decision that was specifically on CCTV, but the reasoning behind it can be used for ShotSpotter alerts. So essentially, if a police officer is in an area, they get a ShotSpotter alert, or they know there have been ShotSpotter alerts, they see people walking around, typically always Black men. The police will, stop them, start talking, and then one thing leads to another. They do a pat down or a frisk, and they find some reason to arrest these people, even if they have nothing to do with the ShotSpotter alert at all. And so that's a direct defiance of this need for individualized reasonable suspicion. There's also been talks of legal issues when it comes to the purpose of using ShotSpotter. So there was a court case a few years ago, Terry v. Ohio, where I believe it was a different technology, but oh yes, it was roadblocks. So the police using roadblocks to generally catch drug crime. The court decision held that you have to have a specific purpose for doing something like a roadblock. It can't just be to generally prevent crime. And so this argument has been applied to ShotSpotter because ShotSpotter is not being used specifically for one specific case or one specific investigation. It's being used to generally prevent crime or crack down on crime or show evidence of crime. It's being used too generally. It's not being used specified. So that's another issue that has been coming up with this.
Yeah, this is super helpful. There are more questions, which is great. But I just want to plug what we're hoping to do because it directly relates to what you just said, Kelsey. We're hoping that we have another ShotSpotter 104 that's will be focused on a case like this that took place in Cambridge, where there was a sound and it triggered a ShotSpotter alert. The police arrived on the scene and they found nothing. And eventually found a person, charged them with a gun possession, but the gun possession wasn't even at the time of the incident. And anyway, the person was recently acquitted of all charges, and this person's life was sort of upended for 2.5 years as a result of this ShotSpotter alert. And so we're hoping to have a ShotSpotter discussion entirely about this case that took place in Cambridge. But I just wanted to yeah, that you brought that into the conversation. I thought it was helpful. Okay, yeah, there are more questions in the chat. Let me take a look. I'm having trouble reading this question for some reason. Carolyn, would you mind reading your question?
I'm unmuted. Hi. I said, sorry if I missed this, but are there reasons other than the cost that are why other cities are canceling their contracts with ShotSpotter? Because that just seemed to me really important in making the case, what other cities are doing. And Kelsey did respond. The biggest one I've seen is the extremely high false positive rate, causing a waste of police resources. So
I can add a little bit more to that, and because we have a very good conversations and connections with other cities that have canceled the contract, and in each city is just as much of a difference that between cities there is in the process of canceling the contract, right? We have contract cancels all the way from Seattle, Washington to Texas, and each city is a different size, and each city the government style is different, as much as it's Cambridge as well, which is a very particular government style. But we have things ranging from the false positive, and the resources that the police is just throwing out there, not only in money but in effort from the police, all the way to actual police commissioners that have spoke has a show spotter being a trinket of the millions and millions of dollars the city is being putting like the chief of police, former chief of police of Houston, Texas, and so all those are probably not true for Cambridge, since Cambridge is being fully funded by the DHS grant, and the expenditure that has been pro provide from the city councilor in the last couple of years, which we can see in a span of 5 or 6 years, has been like pretty much a copy and paste of each year. Every time that they talk about how much they pay for ShotSpotter, which is $50,000, how much is that covered from the grant or from the city? We don't have that information, but every time that it's spoken in city records about ShotSpotter, is always what people think about it. People have no idea what it is, but it's being covered by the DHS grant, and they just, okay, let's go to the next one. So there hasn't been conversations, but the angle that we are taking here in Cambridge is definitely much different than other cities, just for the scale and our situation of government specifically.
Yeah, Gabe, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a great question, Caroline, that you raise. I just want to add a couple more things here that might be helpful. In addition to the cost, I think municipal officials are becoming more privy as to understanding what kind of company SoundThinking is. And it's a company that is constantly changing the goalpost as to what is success and what they're defining as success. So as Kelsey and I had mentioned earlier, they had originally pitched themselves to all these agencies as crime reduction, gun violence reduction, technology producers, and they were found to be debunked. So then they changed their narrative, and then they changed their narrative again. And I think city councilors are becoming smarter and more critical about companies that provide services or sell products like this. That's one thing. And there's actually a really great line from Durham city, from a city councilor in Durham, who effectively mentions this, like, what you are telling us now in order to keep the contract in Durham is not what you said when you sold us this product originally. And they're starting to catch them and kind of keeping receipts, you could say. The other thing I'd also mention, and this is relatively new, so I can't quite confirm if this is something that is in the conversations, but it is new, and I would assume that I would enter the conversation in the other cities, is that there was a recent research in Chicago that found that ShotSpotter alerts actually slow down 911 responses to other things. So there's a restructuring of police time, or at least 911 time. So a ShotSpotter alert is being prioritized over someone calling 911 for a different reason. And that's a real concern, right? Like, even regarding anything calling with 911, if your call is not being answered to for whatever reason because questionable company is kind of hogging the priority line there, that's a real concern.
I want to chime in on this question. It's not exactly this question, but we've been having conversations with the Cambridge City Council, who would ultimately be the ones making the decision in Cambridge, right? And a few other things have come up. There are city councilors who are interested in hearing from their constituents, and that they would vote against it if their constituents asked them to. And there are some who said that they would vote against it if impacted communities are requested. But then there are all these legal questions that Kelsey brought up, the Fourth Amendment questions, wiretapping questions. Internally also, we've been having conversations about violations of the tech surveillance ordinance, or even violations of the existing contract, and potentially, violations of the bidding process in Cambridge, because in theory, or the law says in Cambridge that any contract over $9,999 has to be subject to a public bidding process. And there was no such process for the $50,000 that the city pays to for maintenance fees for ShotSpotter. And so does it mean that federal level grants supersede municipal bidding laws? And then what does that mean ultimately for local governance? Yeah, and then there are obviously other places. There were city councilors in Cambridge who were interested in hearing from other police departments and police chiefs about why they would not want to use ShotSpotter, why they would want to cancel a contract. And then obviously there were a ton of questions about finances. And the finances are sort of complex, right? There are places that have direct contracts with ShotSpotter, and then there are places that are funded by federal government grants. But then there are these those are the direct costs, but it's really complicated to calculate the indirect costs. Like, how much money does the city pay to constantly send out SWAT teams, the big heavy gun toting police officers in their armored vehicles, to multiple calls from ShotSpotter, especially in July and August around 4th of July, and New Year's and things like that. So how much does that cost the city, and how much more does it cost that we're using ShotSpotter versus when we didn't have ShotSpotter? But then there are these continued other costs, right? For example, if there are more ShotSpotter alerts that are triggering these investigations, and then people are being stopped and frisked and being arrested, this is putting an additional strain, and we've heard this actually from lawyers, on the pro bono law system, on the I keep losing this word every time we have this conversation. Lawyers, court-appointed lawyers, thank you. The additional strain on that system, which is already underfunded and already strained from from mass incarceration altogether. So it's complex to figure out how to even calculate those costs, but there are these sort of multiplying costs that need to be considered. And these are part of the conversations that we're having with city councilors. And then the other big thing that we've been hearing from city councilors are about the data. They want the data. They want to know if we're coming to them and saying, please cancel the contract, they want to know how effective is it. But then we don't have the data. Nobody has the data. And so it becomes really challenging. And when we point to data from Chicago or Kansas City, those places are not Cambridge, and they want to know what's happening in Cambridge. And so those are some of the key questions that our city councilors are asking about ShotSpotter and why they would vote in favor or to oppose keeping the ShotSpotter contract. Okay, I want to pass it to this other question. So what does the Cambridge police say about why they want to keep ShotSpotter? Andy, you wanted to say something about that?
Yeah, I love that. I love that question just because before I had so many answers about other municipalities and other cities, but I have something to say about Cambridge now when it comes to this, and this actually comes from another conversation that we have with another city council where, very open, very, receptive to receive all the information about ShotSpotter and listen to the data, even if it was little, the data that we had at that moment. But this city council was, expressing their interest on going and talking with the police chief here in Cambridge and asking about this and talking to her specifically about ShotSpotter. And basically, at this moment, she was trying to get as much information from us as she could just to go there. And one of the things that I wanted to express to her and our experience talking with other people, not only city council, but other people here in Cambridge about ShotSpotter, is the lack of knowledge about the device. And the fact is that actually includes the police departments too. They usually have no idea much about information that they receive from the parent company, which is SoundThinking, about what the device is supposed to do. And one of the latest, which Gabriel talked a little bit, is to saves lives. Saves lives. How it saves lives? There is no information or empirical, data talking about that. And something that I left this city council in mind in that moment was to, if you talk to the commissioner, ask him about not only whether they need ShotSpotter or not, but where are the evidence of the last 10 years that ShotSpotter has been in the city? How the positive effects of ShotSpotter has been. Like, let me see it. Why extract as much detail as you can from them, and let us know. Let us know what they said. We will love to know, because so far it's all about saves lives. We need something like that, and we don't pay for it. So yeah, I believe that um trying to subtract information from them of how much they know about it and the data about how good it does is the best way to shut down the conversation, because we know that there's not much information that they have about this device or any other technology surveillance in cameras. But that's my answer on that.
I mean, I have the sort of mirroring perspective on this. So I do want to reiterate that we haven't had any conversations with the police commissioner. I just want to say that. So nothing I'll say is coming from the police commissioner. That's a record. Please, you all heard me say that. Anyway, that said, we've heard from others that the key argument that they're making for not just ShotSpotter, but all of the recent requests for new technology, new gadgets for the police department, is that they need all of these things in order to solve crimes. That is to say that they're not able to solve crimes unless they have these new things. And that's not an unusual argument for police chiefs who are interested, police departments that are interested in acquiring these things, who have been courted by these companies. It looks like, Gabe, do you feel like I've heard this talking point from you, but I actually just heard this in a meeting. So
Oh,
can you
yeah,
speak to
yeah.
this a little bit more?
Yeah, no, well, actually, two quick things. So I'll address that one right now, which is one of the things that I have found in my conversations and my interviews with my research is that ShotSpotter will rely on building local brokerages with different constituents in the city to lobby their way in as an important tool. And one of the things that I hear so often when I interview people who are either with the police or are pro police is that it's a tool in the toolbox and that you don't want to get rid of a tool that helps them do their job. And that is something that is just constantly refrained to me. I think the other thing I just wanted to really mention is the company also relies on corporate boosters. So they will have relationships with old superintendents and have them be advocates for their technology and maybe in the city that they used to be the superintendent for. And that is actually exactly what happened in Chicago, where a former superintendent became one of the loudest voices in the local media scene here as a proponent for ShotSpotter. Since he was no longer an elected official, he could officially, take money from a company, presumably. So that's something to note is that the company really relies on building these relationships with the police departments as a way to establish a relationship and then have them as advocates. There are police officers, as previously mentioned, who are now openly criticizing the technology as a waste of funds. And just to close this thought process a little bit, I want to really quickly circle back and Andy's mention about saving lives. Now, there is one research attempt at trying to quantify the number of lives saved in Chicago because of ShotSpotter. Now, that might come up in conversations. However, that study, A, was not peer reviewed, B, was statistically not significant. So, like, that is something that they will purport and try to share and argue. However, it's not even by like basic undergraduate stats classes. Like, is that like a finding to share? What you found is you found a number and you found it that it's not statistically significant, so you move on. So just to know that is, I would assume, is going to be another report that the company is going to be using to talk about themselves and saving lives. So if that is something that you come across, just note that even though that report says it's saving lives, they actually don't explicitly say that it's not significant. And I only know that because I went to a city council meeting here in Chicago where they announced that during the meeting, not in the actual online portal where that they shared the news. And this is also an opportunity to dig at UChicago where I am because they are UChicago researchers. So I will pick that fight and you can quote me on that one.
Wow. Thank you for bringing that up. Please do send a link to that if you can at some point. Right. I think this has been a really fruitful discussion. We are about time. Thank you all for coming. I'm really excited to continue this conversation. I hope you found it as informative as we hoped you would and that we found it to be. We will continue our conversation on ShotSpotter. However, our next community education workshop is a collaboration with a number of different organizations, including the Cambridge Housing Justice Coalition members, like Our Revolution Cambridge, the YWCA Cambridge, and the Cambridge Public Library. We are hosting this discussion on affordable for whom. We're asking questions about the definitions of affordability and sharing stories from people who are housed and rent burdened in Cambridge to discuss how we can have a revolution to make Cambridge more affordable for working people. anyway, that's going to be on April 2nd at the Central Square Branch Library, not the main library. Central Square Library at 7 p.m. So we'll be sending out an announcement, but yeah, we hope to see you there. Andy, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I just want to quickly recognize the fact that in our flyer for today, we had, proposed, not proposed, but it was coming today, our legal expert, Jonathan Maines from the MacArthur Justices Research Group from Chicago. He couldn't come today, and he actually sent some remarks about the documentation that Kelsey was putting forward and some of his experience when it comes to ShotSpotter at the legal level. And I'm gonna make sure, or I'm gonna do my best to send this some way to everybody so you guys can see his remarks about ShotSpotter in Cambridge and the information from the research job that Kelsey presented.
All right, thank you for that. Yeah, we'll be sending out the notes. Shout out to Joe for taking notes during this meeting. We have all the links that were dropped. We will be creating a summary and sending that out to everyone who registered. All right, thank you all.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you, Gabe. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.